Is that a fact? Is that a fact that is hard to fill that role? Is that a fact that you have to have bad months in business or tight months, or that you can never relax because something might go wrong, or you have to push really hard and for success to be true? Those are all not facts, but those are stories that were driving my reality. Hello, you guys. Welcome back to the podcast. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, I've actually recorded a few guest interviews since coming home from the Joe Dispenza retreat, and I think you're going to instantly hear and pick up on the difference just in those conversations. And it was one of those experiences for me that everything changed. Because when you evolve to such a drastic measure through an experience, everything changes because you shift and you change your beliefs and your thoughts and how you see the world and your perspective, and that changes you. And there's a part of me that's like, have I said this too many times to this audience of like, oh my gosh, I'll never be the same. But then I realized that one of my core values as a person is growth. It's to support my audience with growth. It's to support my team with growth. It's for me to be always evolving path of growth. All that to say, I had an incredible week at Joe Dispenza. I know I talked about it on here before I left. I'm actually not sure yet if I'm going to do a recap podcast. I think I will, but I think I need some time because the week has rocked so many things for me that a lot of my beliefs and even tools and methods that I, prior to that week would have said are, the best thing ever. And my main focus when it comes to growth, things like breathwork, has evolved. And like a new reality has been shown to me. And so I have to figure out how all of that fits in my teaching. And if you've been here for a while, you remember when I went to Costa Rica the first time when I went to the Wild Woman retreat, and I shared it on here. I'm sure you can go back and find that podcast episode from maybe like a year and a half ago. But this was Wild Woman Retreat 2.0, but probably like 100 times more powerful. And it was also a similar experience in the sense that I had no idea what I was signing up for. It was just one of those things that I knew I needed to be there. I had heard great things about the event and just knew I needed to be there. And so I went without much expectation. And it was not what I expected it to be. I don't even know what I expected. I really didn't have any expectations, but it wasn't what I expected it to be. And there was a lot of challenges that I came up against in the week, which I think is important. You're growing when you come up against challenges and you have to overcome yourself in those challenges. And the first few days, I actually really struggled. I didn't like it. And I was there with my husband, and I said on day 3, I'm like, is this fun for you? Because this is not fun. Like, I will do this event, I will finish this week, but I will never come back. And then everything changed. So anyways, this is not a recap of the Joe Dispenza event, but this is I am forever changed. And it will be felt in all of my content, in how I speak, in how I show up, in my energy, in my relationships, in my parenting, in my leadership, in the events that I host, everywhere. And if you listen to the last few podcasts, I think actually only one will have come out as of now. That is an interview. You'll hear it because everything's changed. And what a beautiful journey that we get to go on. And I think that it's really important that you put yourself in situations where you grow so much that things that you previously believed are no longer true. And there's somebody, I don't know who it is, there's somebody who has coined the saying, I reserve the right to change my mind anytime. And I think that's important because I oftentimes think, especially as influencers and leaders, we feel like when we say something is truth, or this is what we believe, or this is what we think, we feel like we have to back that up forever. But the reality is, if you're on a path of growth and you're gaining wisdom and you're gaining experience, you may come across things that you change your mind and you go, oh, the old me thought this, but now I think this because I've evolved. I've had an experience that taught me different things. And I actually think it's really dangerous if we think we can never change our mind. And it can be challenging when you've got an audience and people watching and you're like, well, I don't want to contradict something I just said. Well, I own it. I just own, this is my experience. And so I bring to you today the best version of myself. And I would only hope that in a week, a month, a year from now, that's a new person for you. Okay, today's podcast episode. It's going to tie in some of my lessons, not even my personal lessons. It's going to tie in things that I think are super relevant for you after my experience, but related to business. But it's not a recap on the event. If you want me to do a recap on the event, send me a message and request it, and it will push me to do it. Okay, so we're going to talk about 5 strategies you need to hear today. These are specific business CEO strategies. Yes, they relate to marketing, but they're also speaking to you as a CEO, as an individual, as a human being, as a leader. And they are things that I just feel on my heart, are reminders and strategies that might make you think and really take a look at where your time, where your energy, where your resources are going right now. First strategy is a question, and that is, how could you, if you had to, how could you cut the noise of all that you consume back? I think this is an epidemic. I think that the amount of information that we consume as humans, but especially as entrepreneurs, and this really impacts your marketing and your business growth and how you show up authentically, because when you think about in a day how much you consume, from podcasts to books to courses to scrolling social media to maybe YouTube videos to newsletters, email, just think about it. Take inventory, and take inventory on the amount of people that you let occupy real estate in your brain. Because if you just scroll Instagram, that's probably dozens. And when's the last time you really took inventory and asked yourself, these people and these things that I'm consuming, this information that I'm consuming, is it really helping, or is it just noise? Especially with social media, when you think about how you feel, like let's say there's somebody you follow, and when they put content out, you feel not enough. You feel like they're way farther ahead than you. You feel like your ideas suck. You feel like you'll never be as good as them. You feel jealous. Is that a good thing for you to be filling your brain with? Or let's say you're consuming a podcast, and every time you listen to that podcast, hopefully it's not mine, every time you listen to that podcast, you find yourself overwhelmed, and you find yourself thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have any more clarity than I did when I started that podcast. I feel overwhelmed about all that I'm not doing. I feel like I need to do a million things, and I'm now distracted, and I'm thinking about this shiny object and this thing over here, and like it didn't really give me clarity that I can turn into actions. And why am I listening to it? You know, am I associating consuming with productivity? And I think we do that a lot. We tell ourselves, well, I'm learning, I'm listening to podcasts, and I'm challenging myself to learn new things. And so therefore that's growing my business and it's productive. But I really think that the more you can take control of your environment and what you feed your brain and what you allow yourself to consume and where your time and energy goes, because that's energy. You are giving someone your attention when you consume something of theirs, whether it's a 30-second reel or an hour-long podcast. And there's nothing bad about consuming. It's not about, oh, don't go on social media or don't listen to podcasts. Is it intentional or not? Have you intentionally chosen to consume this, or are you unintentionally, subconsciously consuming it? So first question is, could you and should you cut back on the noise of your consumption? Because what happens if you cut back? Now, that attention, that energy that you would have put into consuming that, now where does it go? Will go somewhere. And if you're intentional with it, maybe it goes to specific things you need to do that you've been putting off in your business. Maybe it goes to white space. Maybe it goes to you brainstorming and thinking of new ideas that you couldn't have thought of by consuming. There's so much creativity that can be accessed within us when we give ourselves the space for that. So that's the first question that I think a lot of people need to hear today, because I think a lot of our consumption can so easily become subconscious. Second strategy is also a question, and I want you to really sit with this one, which is, are you currently operating as the future CEO of your business or the past? This one is huge when you really get this. My week in Joe Dispenza has just amplified this. This is something I've said for a very long time, but it's very much his teachings that I just naturally have always thought this way, which is, if you want to have $1 million business, $10 million business, 6-figure business, a business in general, or anything, you want to have anything, you have to become the person who already has that now. And so many of you don't understand this. And it's also because so much of how you show up is subconscious. And I see this all the time with entrepreneurs because this is what happens. They allow fear and lack and scarcity to dictate their actions today. So instead of going, I have this vision, I have this dream of this incredible thing I'm building, and it's this much money and this much impact, and I have this much freedom, and they can see the vision, they can see it, but they haven't brought it to reality yet. And instead of acting as the person who already has that, and that's already a reality, they act as the person today going, well, what if it doesn't work? And I tried this thing once and it didn't work, and I'm afraid of that happening again. And what if I spend money and it doesn't work? What if I hire help and they don't do a good job? And they operate from a place of fear. So when you think about the future CEO of your company and that future version of you, who they exist if you choose to become them. Like, that's literally it. Like, they already exist, that person. Do you have the actual physical elements of that future CEO? No, but you can't have it until you become them. And I see this so much with like the beginning phases of entrepreneurship, because if you started your business as like a bootstrapping, solo entrepreneur where you had to figure stuff out and you had to do everything yourself, and you got used to this feeling of like, it's really hard and nobody can do it as good as me and it might not work. And so I need to do everything and I need to kill myself doing everything and overwork and not hire help and not invest in my business because I'm still proving that this is going to work. And what happens is I see entrepreneurs stay in that state even once things start working. Even like a micro, they start working. Like you sell a couple of your product or a couple of your service. As soon as that starts happening, you've got to become the next version of you. And does the next version of you, are they doing everything for your business? Are they making decisions out of scarcity and like, what if this doesn't work? Are they bootstrapping still? I have a client, Mallory, who has shared this story before. We were in Alaska. She was on my retreat in Alaska and we were on a hike. And she was kind of telling me about like what she spends her time doing, her business, and like how much she's still in it and how stressed out she was. And at this point, she had a $500,000 a year business, maybe just above. And that year that she was in Alaska, we turned it in, it was $1 million business by the end of the year. And we're on a hike and she's telling me this stuff. And I said, you know what the problem is? You are still acting like you're a bootstrapping CEO. Like you're making $20,000+ a month, sometimes more when you launch. And you're still, responding to customer service emails and working late nights and acting like you're this bootstrapping CEO because that's what you're used to. That's what has become comfortable for you. But would the Mallory of a $1 million company be doing those things? And instantly she's like, no, of course she wouldn't. And made all these changes, hired more help, got herself off Zoom calls, got out of her inbox, deleted her email from her phone, became that future version. And then guess what? Made almost $1 million last year, $970,000. So the question for you to sit with is today, right now, the day you're listening to this podcast, did you show up as the current CEO, the current version, based on the past things that have happened? Based off of maybe fear, scarcity, what if? Or did you choose to become the future version? And maybe sit with, like, who is that future version? Who is that future CEO? What does she believe? What does he believe? How does he show up? How does he make decisions? How does he spend his time? How does she lead a team? Does she have a team? And choose to become them today. It's actually that simple. And then you start making decisions from that place, and guess what? It becomes your reality. The third strategy is a question again, but also this is one directly related to marketing. Because I think that with going back to the first thing I said around noise, I think we so often get so filled with noise that we forget the simplicity of marketing, and we forget that it's ultimately about connecting with your ideal customer, with potential customers, with your leads, with your customers. And oftentimes when you start a business, you do this really well naturally. Like you built a business around what you already did well. A lot of us, that's our story. And then it became a business, or we knew we could do it well, and so we turned it into a business. And throughout that experience, we oftentimes forget this, and we start filling the noise with, well, this coach said this, and this program said this, and they said this on this podcast episode. And then you start questioning yourself, and you forget that you already have the answers and you already know how to connect with your ideal customer. So the question for you to sit with and really think about is, how could you more deeply today, this week, right now, connect with your potential ideal customers, your audience, your leads, or your customers? Is there something you could do? Is there a piece of content you could create? Is there a belief or a statement that if you shared, they'd feel so connected to it? Is there a webinar you could build, a training you could host, an offer you might create? Whatever comes to you when you think about that. If I asked you and I said, you have to do 3 things this week or this month, maybe some take a little longer than a week. You have to do 3 things that more deeply connect you to your ideal customer. What are the answers that come to you? I'm like, you have no choice and you have to come up with them. You can't go and, look on Instagram and look what somebody else is doing or even what I'm doing, right? What are the things that you would do if you had to make a deeper connection with your audience and your leads and your customers? And then do those things. And a lot of times you already have the answer to this. You already know this. And because of the noise, you've forgotten it or you've questioned it and you've gone back from the roots and the basics of what started your business and that connection, and you've allowed noise to overcrowd it and kind of push it out. Next question to ask yourself is, do you know what is working and not working in your business so you can be more intentional with your actions and your resources? I feel that a lot of entrepreneurs are so reactionary to their environment, to noise, to their next steps. Like they wake up and they let their environment and the noise around them dictate what they do that day. And a lot of times when I ask entrepreneurs, well, what is working for your business? What is working to attract potential customers? What has led to connecting with your audience? What has maybe sold your offer? And if you've never sold your offer, you can't tell me, oh, nothing is working. Because I am sure that unless today is day 1 of your business, you have done things that have gained some sort of momentum. And have you really taken inventory and said, this is what has worked. This is what I know works and is the right direction. This type of content, this messaging, this offer, this strategy, putting my energy into this. And this is what I know doesn't work. It feels like I'm pushing. There's a lot of resistance. I'm confused. I procrastinate it. It doesn't really get traction. It doesn't sound like me. If you have data, even better. That's a whole other thing is most entrepreneurs don't really know their numbers. And, I like to be able to get this even down to the numbers. Like when we look at what works and what doesn't work down to every single sale in a business every month, where's it coming from? How'd they find out about you? How long were they on your list? And what made them buy? And so we run these customer journey reports for clients. But if you don't have that level of data, then at least pausing and going, what do I know works? What do I know has at least gotten some sort of momentum? Maybe there's data to back it up. Maybe I know that I've tried 4 strategies and this one did the best. Maybe I know that I've posted, 30 times on social media in the last few months. And if I go look at the content, I could pull out these themes about what did the best so that you can be more intentional with everything, with the content you create, the type of lead gens you build, the offers that you sell, the way you talk about your offer, the way you show up, your messaging. And instead of allowing yourself to get to that reactive place, which honestly takes a consistent, almost daily effort to not choose that. It's easier to become reactionary because there is so much noise. It's easier to go, I see that thing, that video that someone just said, I should do this. Okay, I'm going to go focus on that tomorrow. And instead of saying, let me be intentional. If I choose to put my energy somewhere, I'm talking about myself. If I choose to put my energy somewhere in a day, it's intentional. I very rarely these days catch myself in a place where I'm reacting. The only time is if I start scrolling and I don't even react. It just becomes like I'm not being intentional about the use of my time in most of those moments. And so when I go into my day, I do not start my day by just looking at anything related to noise, email, Voxer, Slack, social media, because that's going to instantly hijack my energy and my time and the way I think I should spend it. First, I'm intentional with planning it. And every day is a game of what's priority, what's going to move the needle the most. There's never a shortage of things to do, like ever for entrepreneurs, never a shortage. It's what is going to move the needle the most and what has worked. What do I know is going to move the needle the most, either based on data or not? and what's going to wait. If you are able to take inventory of that and get better and better at allowing your days to be dictated through intention versus reacting, your time will become so much more productive and so much more impactful. It's why for me, if I have 3 hours with no meetings and I can just get stuff done, I am not kidding you when I say I get done a week or more worth of work in 3 hours, because I know exactly what's priority and exactly where I'm putting my time and energy, and I do not let anything hijack it. And I also am constantly looking in the business at what is working and what is not. I don't just do things because they're on a list, or because someone said I should do them, or because I even thought I should do them a month ago. Maybe it's changed. I'm constantly looking at the resources that the company has and that I have as a CEO and where it's being allocated. The final question, strategic question to ask yourself today. This is something that has been really top of mind after my Joe Dispenza retreat. And it's something I have known, and I've talked about the letters I got in my tattoo related to this, but I think it's a really important reminder. So I'm going to bring it up, which is, what are the stories that you're telling yourself on a daily basis, the program that you're running that you're not aware of? And really, like, my homework to you would be, first step, become aware of it. I realized after this event how much even me, as a very aware, I feel that I'm a very aware, conscious person. I had, before going into this event, a pretty good stillness practice. Now it's, 10x what I had before, but I feel like I was a pretty aware person. I went to this event and I realized, wow, I complain way more than I should. And there are stories that I was telling myself that I didn't realize. I did not even realize. Like, it was so ingrained that it felt normal. So let me give you an example. I think there are some parts of business that forever, because I can trace it back to when I was a kid, my parents doing obviously the best that they knew how as the people they were, and I'm sure this was passed down from their parents. Oftentimes, even when we did have a lot of money, the message was, oh, that's expensive, or we can't do that, or we may not. Like, there's like a fear behind it. And what that reinforced is, like, making money in business has to be hard. And it has to be this constant, I want to say, like, chase, or there has to be like a pushing involved in it, or you never can really like relax because something bad might happen. That's why it feels like chasing energy. And there's some positives to having that mindset, because what it does is it keeps you always fresh and innovative and not getting too comfortable and staying, on your toes. So there's actually a positive to it, as with anything. And I feel like the story that for a long time I would tell myself is the only way to be successful in business is through really having to push, and things have to be hard and barely enough, or it's like good months, then you're going to have the bad months. And it's like, that's not a fact. So there were stories, or another one that I can think of is like, finding a certain role in my company is hard. It's hard to fill that role. Almost impossible to find those people who are good and be able to bring them in. And we're just always going to struggle with that. And I would say that as if it was a fact. Like 3 weeks ago, a few of, these stories, I would have been like, that's just the way my business is. Filling that role, it's hard. You're going to have, bad months in business, or you got to make sure you have this much in the bank because you never know what's going to happen. So these things that I would say as if they were 100% true. These are stories that I was telling myself in my reality were true, but are they true? Is that a fact? Is that a fact that is hard to fill that role? Is that a fact that you have to have bad months in business, or tight months, or that you can never relax because something might go wrong, or you have to push really hard and for success to be true? Those are all not facts, but those are stories that were driving my reality. And then the complaining thing. Again, I think of myself as a pretty conscious person. And when I go back and I think about, a month ago, I would get enjoyment, right? You feel better as a human, or at least you tell yourself you do, when, let's say, something happens, you have a bad day, someone makes you mad, whatever situation happens, and you go, poor me, let me tell you, to my husband, can you believe that happened? What an idiot. This is so crazy. And can you believe this? Like, who would do this? Okay, that is not helpful energy. all that is doing is reinforcing those negative feelings that I have and not coming up with a solution. So what I have done since coming back is looking, first of all, awareness around all those stories, and then constantly asking myself, well, is that true? When I subconsciously and now consciously say, it is hard to fill that role, is that true? No. Is there a reality where it's not hard to fill that role? Yes. Have I found that reality yet? No. Should I become the person who believes that's a true reality now so I can create that reality? Yes. And when I find myself on those days where I feel sorry for myself or, somebody did something to me and poor me, is it helpful to complain? Or would it be more helpful for me to go, you're never going to believe this challenge that I came across today. So-and-so did this. I'm sure it was with the best of intentions because most people are doing their best. Now here's what I'm dealing with. And I get to face this challenge. Leaving my Joe Dispenza week, I made a commitment to myself. There are no more problems that I have to face, only challenges I get to face. And that one small shift has made such a massive difference in myself and in my leadership. No more complaining. Absolutely no more complaining. If I start to feel that, it's instantly into where's the gratitude? Where can I find gratitude? Where can I find a positive in this? Because it exists. And then those stories that I tell myself, are facts and believe they are facts. Well, it's simple to change your belief because all you have to do is challenge it and say, is that really true? My challenge to you is today, take inventory. Catch yourself in those micro moments where something happened or you're driving along or you're operating in your business or whatever, and you tell yourself a story as if it's true. And you are operating as if something that isn't a fact is a fact, and that's driving how you show up, the actions you take, the beliefs you have, and therefore your entire personality. I think you will be surprised to find how many stories you subconsciously tell yourself. And once you shine the light on them, now it's like they don't have anywhere to go. The change can happen so fast. That's why so much of even my week at Joe Dispenza, it feels like this overnight new reality. Because as soon as you click it and you're like, oh, I have awareness on this and now I understand, it's changed. And then maybe take inventory of the complaining. Because I know that complaining, gossiping, and I'd even be someone that'd be like, I rarely, it takes a lot actually to get me to that state of complaining or to engage in some sort of gossiping. And sometimes I find myself engaging in that because it's easier. It's like there's people around in my gym or whatever, and they're talking about something and I just engage like, oh yeah, that's so stupid, blah, blah, blah. It takes more energy to not do that. It takes more energy to check yourself and go, wait, no, that's not how I want to show up. Because when I show up that way, I'm giving my energy to things I don't want to give my energy to. When I go to my husband at the end of a day and say, you're never going to believe this and this idiot and blah, 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 how is that helping me? It's not. And it's not doing anything to the other person. It's only hurting me. And if you engage in gossip or any of that low level communication, it's only hurting you. And you will feel so much more powerful the second you have awareness on that and you just make a decision, no more. And that's what I did, no more. And is it going to come up as a temptation sometimes? Yeah, probably. And I am now so careful about what I say. I was just in the gym yesterday and there's a lot of people in the gym because I think a lot of people, this is how they live their life. And I don't say that with judgment. I say that with empathy because when you don't know, you don't know. There was someone in the gym and they were talking about a situation and they were just like, oh, people just suck, And it could have been so easy for me to be like, yeah, people suck. People do things that suck. People do things that suck. Yeah, but people do not suck. And I don't want that energy. I'm not going to agree with that. I'm not going to engage in that. So actually, I just said nothing. It didn't feel like a time where I could correct her. So I didn't say anything. I didn't want to engage. And in my mind was like, I deny that statement. People don't suck. Feel my heart. There's love for people. So what are the stories that you tell yourself are facts that aren't facts? And specifically around your business and your business's success and who you are and how you can show up. And how could you change that? Overnight. You can change those things overnight the second you have awareness of them. All right, everybody. I hope these 5 strategies got you thinking, gave you some actions for you to go implement. And I am so excited for so many things. But one thing I'm really excited for is my live event in July because after last week, that event just got 100 times better. Because when I evolve, when I up level, everybody I get to bring with me. And my events are how I show that the most. So if you are coming to Embodied Marketing Live, you are in for an incredible experience. If you are not, you can check it out at embodiedmarketing.com/live. And it's July 17 to 19 in Austin. It's going to be amazing. Someone was like, are you going to make us meditate for hours a day? Because that's what I did at Joe Dispenza. No, I won't make you meditate for hours a day, but it's going to be pretty incredible. Like, you think the last one was good? I'm so excited. All right, everybody, I'll talk to you next time.